Here is an assignment 1 refresher for skill acquisition based on the Socrative quiz and the answers to the questions, with an insight into the actual requirements of each learning outcome for assignment 1. The first topic we looked at was theories of learning. Here are the theories of learning on the right hand side, which you may wish to include within your assignment. You don't have to include them all, but the more you do include and the more integrated they are with each other and with other topics that have been covered and that will be discussed, the more likely you are to meet the higher criteria. This first learning outcome, 3.1, is to evaluate the learning theories in sporting contexts. On the left hand side in the blue text you see a definition of the term evaluate, and that is something which is really important to get hold of, that the meaning of the term evaluate, as will be the other command verb when we discuss that as well. And I would certainly say that the command verb and the last part of the learning objective, as it is here at the top, the first part of the learning objective would be one of the latter things you need to look at when you're forming your assignment through its many draft phases. From the question here, which is placed at the top of the screen, we have an answer. This is one answer and one option of an answer of many possible answers for this question, as there are a number of learning theories to evaluate, and the key there is again evaluate. So as we are looking at this answer, we should be reading through it in terms of, does it give sporting examples to demonstrate understanding of the theories in relation to each other? So for example, we see here for the social learning theory, you observe people's behaviour and attitudes and what the outcomes of the behaviour are, followed by the sporting example. A young footballer that is less experienced may be inspired by the positive attitude and commitment displayed by displayed and experienced and older, more accomplished athletes. This then moves on to the next theory and repeats the same sort of process here, followed by a sporting example. The latter part of this answer provides information on the two types of conditioning, classical and operant, with a good opportunity there taken for a reference. That hasn't been the case further up here, and if we're looking at using this information to go into our assignments, you should be embedding references as and where appropriate, and every opportunity that you can. So as we look at this answer on the whole, it's very much a question of, does the answer evaluate? Is there enough judgment made on the different learning theories of learning? Is there enough determined which assesses the theories of learning? On this answer there isn't, so it would fall short of the evaluate requirement. Here's a second answer for the same question, so we're still looking for evaluate. This answer takes a very good opportunity immediately to provide an academic reference, and which would then demonstrate a clear understanding of, in this case, Gestalt theory, followed by an example. Obviously be aware of spelling, punctuation and grammar, and let's take care of that as we come to drafting and final drafting of our assignment for submission. An example of this would be learning the offside trap in football. This followed by this theory is closely linked with social learning theory, and that's an excellent opportunity to take the link between Gestalt theory and social learning theory, and that link there provides much more of what's needed to evaluate. We are assessing how Gestalt theory and, in this case, how social learning theory are connected. So we're looking for connections, we're looking for similarities, we're looking for differences at the same time. And that's also embedded by watching, observing footballers, which could mimic and certainly reinforce that initial offside trap example. So that's a really good opportunity to take that. When we come down to the bottom of this paragraph, it looks a little bit disjointed. We then have Thorndike's law of effect, which is again another good opportunity to link a different theory in with what we're mentioning. So maybe the start of the next paragraph here could be reworded differently to read better, and it's highlighting behaviour which is followed by positive reinforcement and consequences. So that's very much good descriptive information of law of effect from Thorndike. The middle part of this second paragraph here is quite descriptive and could do with a little bit of improvement in there to make it much more worthwhile and productive, meaningful in terms of the sentencing and points that are trying to be made. However, the end of this paragraph does sum up nicely what is being said in this entire answer, that the three theories are all linked together as they are learning through learning and modelling. They're also affected by positive and negative reinforcements, which is great because that positive and negative reinforcements at the bottom, which has been brought into the second paragraph very much, is essentially where you will get a much more fluid report because you're bringing in things from feedback when you're talking about and discussing learning theories. That's an excellent answer. The second command verb that we're looking at in the report, and as we look at this, we'll look at the second learning outcome that we discussed, and we're looking at phases of learning. The three phases of learning here, and this is quite what you should see as a straightforward topic to talk about in completing the assessment. Again, it asks you for sporting contexts, so certainly provide examples within sport, and when we say sport, we need to talk about sport, learning sport, learning skills in sport. We need to talk about the development of athletes or participants and acquiring skills. That's the key thing here. The second thing is the main content here, so we're looking at phases of learning. The last thing that we need to look at is the first thing within the learning outcome here, and that would be the command verb of discuss. So we need to write about the topic in detail, taking into account different issues or ideas. So within this, we should look and see three phases of learning. Can we bring in the different authors' interpretations of phases of learning? Do they mention cognitive? Do they have different terminology for this? And we should go about trying to get our discussive information, writing about the topic through different authors' viewpoints, and bringing sporting examples to essentially explain these through sporting examples, but discuss them from different authors' points of view. This answer, we're looking at the discussion from for the three phases of learning. We can see here there's some information on cognitive, some information on associative, and some information on autonomous. Now, as you read this answer, and you can pause the video at this point, you'll see that each of those answers, or parts of the answer, provide very descriptive information, and in some cases a little bit of minimal specific exemplary information. So the examples in sporting contexts, there is one here, trying to learn a new skill in football, such as a Maradona. Maybe be a little bit more specific than this for someone who doesn't know what that is. The third point here, example in a competitive game when dribbling the ball, and so that the athlete can do the skill and get past players without consciously thinking about it. Be aware of punctuation and grammar here. So quite descriptive in that sense. Obviously, during the constraints of the Socrative quiz, there wasn't the opportunity for you to provide extensive academic information, but this is a good base and shows knowledge of what the three phases are, so that's really good. Try and provide a variety of sporting examples in this case, so not all relating to one sport, to demonstrate your knowledge in a wide range of fields. The following learning outcomes and topics we're just going to touch on, as I feel we've gone into detail with the command verb requirements of evaluate and discuss on the first two. So on the right hand side you see we're looking at transfer of learning. There is what you can include on the right hand side, and now we're going to have a look at a couple of exemplary answers. So within transfer of learning, there's quite a lot that we can talk about: retroactive, proactive, positive, zero, negative, intra-task, which includes variable and random. There are 2 questions here and an answer for each one. Have a look at them. Very much I'm going to draw your attention to this bottom answer. The question being: consider intra-task transfer and discuss this through sporting examples. You'll see here that there is some good exemplary information, sporting example information, for both variable and random, but this is not necessarily discussed. There's not enough detail to provide what is needed for a discussion. It's not written in detail. It is one part and then another part, which is fine, but within that we haven't seen anything on the confirmation of intra-task transfer includes variable and random as a short introductory to start off with. And within each one, this variable answer could be embedded with information on theories of learning, possibly to Gestalt theory, and random practice certainly could have a bit of information which links in from the progression of blocked practice through to variable practice and random practice. So there could be much more to discuss by taking into consideration these areas. The next point we'll look at is Learning Outcome 2.1 with information processing models. Here we've got to evaluate and really hit the learning outcome. There are all 3 models mentioned in this answer. Obviously you would be required to expand on this level of information within your assessment for report. Note here that the good opportunity taken for use of in-text reference, but I've underlined where the year of the textbook should be included in this in-text reference. There probably could be a lot more to evaluate in detail from this answer also. The next area we're looking at is Learning Outcome 2.3, and with this I would certainly look at embedding or following on this information in your report from the previous learning outcome. From these 2 possible answers, the first one here, you could probably see that it is very descriptive on the information from memory, but not much further than that, and needs much more in terms of what's required with sporting examples. The second answer gives sport and exemplary information, and certainly I would encourage you to look at the 2 of these answers, consider them both, and reconstruct the information that is required for the assessment. And certainly the difficulty here comes with the wording, getting the information across. The final learning outcome we'll look at is 2.4, and we're looking at feedback, giving feedback to sports performers. On the right here we've got augmented feedback, and that's where there's a lot of room and a lot of volume for you to get information across within your assessment. And throughout that I would encourage you to consider task feedback and the role that it plays with its immediate information and responses to own performance of the skills, but certainly use augmented feedback, and do not underestimate within your evaluation, as it's highlighting, to assess the role of feedback and different methods of giving feedback. Provide information on the properties of augmented feedback here. So when we are giving this type of augmented feedback, let's get across this information here and the time of that, the content of it, the volume and the presentation of that feedback. In addition to the previous slide, the one thing that we can also include on feedback is information about the 3 types of reinforcement. This answer gives a good level of detail on reinforcement. There is something which relates to academic. Again, in here, just at this point afterwards, in brackets, we would ask for the year of the text or the academic information which was published. I would encourage you to look at this answer and consider, does it evaluate, does it give information relating to sports performers? The important message that I need to get across here is that our examples cannot really be relating to refereeing or decisions, should always be related to skill development, skill acquisition or learning within the sport.